The day I was recognized by the wealthy family, the fake heiress threw a grand welcome banquet for me. She even pushed the menu over, letting me order first. I lowered my gaze and flipped through the all-French menu, not missing the contemptuous smile at the corner of her mouth. Unfortunately, she didn't guess it. The person who adopted me is a foreign tycoon. At the welcome banquet, Shen Qingwan pushed the menu in front of me, smiling gracefully. "Sister, you are the star of the evening. So naturally you should order first." The piano piece happened to stop, and the guests' eyes gathered around. Girls raised in wealth have always handled such attention with ease. Shen Qingwan slightly turned her body, elegantly nodding to everyone in apology, and thoughtfully spoke up to explain on my behalf. "My sister has just returned home and might not be used to such occasions. No rush, take your time to look." I lowered my gaze and flipped through the entirely French menu. I didn't miss the faint, disdainful smile at the corner of her lips. If I were a poor little thing who had just returned from the countryside, I would probably be overwhelmed and flustered by this situation. Unfortunately, she didn't guess right. I was adopted by a wealthy family abroad. From a young age, I attended top private schools, received an elite education, and etiquette and language were ingrained in me from the start. Seeing my gaze linger on the menu, Shen Qingwan let out a soft, "ah." Covering her lips with her fingertips, "Look at my memory, the menu is in French. My sister just came back from, I'm afraid it's a bit difficult for you to read, isn't it?" Shen Jiayang, sitting nearby, immediately sneered. "A country bumpkin who just came back from the countryside, and you think you're worthy of being my sister?" His malice was straightforward, carrying the arrogance of someone who had been spoiled. I shook my head inwardly. I have adorable and well-behaved younger siblings, but one with such poor upbringing, I wouldn't take them even if they were given to me for free. "Ah Yang," Shen Qingwan softly scolded. When she turned to look at me, her face once again wore a gentle smile. "Don't take it to heart, little sister. Ah Yang is young and speaks bluntly. I'll teach you slowly from now on, so you won't make a fool of yourself again." These words, seemingly protective, actually confirmed the truth. I glanced at my parents, whose expressions were growing increasingly somber not far away, and clicked my tongue in my heart. I should have listened to the netizens' advice and not returned to find my biological parents. Seeing Shen Qingwan about to take away the menu, I tapped my finger on one spot. "I've decided." Upon hearing this, Shen Jiayang immediately craned his neck to look over. 3 seconds later, he burst into exaggerated laughter. "Ha ha ha." He laughed so hard he nearly doubled over, pointing at the menu. "She ordered a piece of music. This country bumpkin thinks a piano piece is a dish. Ha ha ha." Shen Jiayang's mockery was unrestrained, and even some of the guests joined in with low, scornful chuckles. They exchanged glances, the corners of their mouths curving with a knowing arc, as if silently confirming, "See, she really is unfit for the grand stage." Father Shen Zhengguo's face darkened. He finally spoke, but it wasn't to stop Shen Jiayang. Instead, he turned to me, his lowered voice filled with irritation. "Enough. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Who are you trying to show off for? Go upstairs first, don't stay here." Looking at him like this, I began to understand. So the problem started with Dad. I didn't move, turning my gaze to my mother, Zhou Yaru. She quickly averted her gaze and nodded toward the servant beside her. "Take her back to her room." Shen Jiayang, feeling emboldened, became even more arrogant. "Did you hear that? Get out of here. Are you not embarrassed enough just standing there?" Shen Qingwan stared straight at me, the smugness in her eyes impossible to hide. Finished speaking, fluent French slipped out effortlessly. I ignored Shen Qingwan's frozen expression, turned my gaze to the head chef, lightly tapped a few items on the menu, and spoke softly with him. The head chef withdrew, and the piano melody began to flow once more. Exactly the piece I had just requested. I swayed the champagne glass, gently tapping to the rhythm, raising my glass in a toast to Shen Qingwan. I raised my voice, still speaking in French. "Thank you, sister, for the thoughtful arrangements. The menu is well crafted, and the music is perfectly matched, making me feel right at home." Shen Qingwan forced a smile, instinctively picking up her own glass, but her movements lost their previous elegance, and her reply came out haltingly. The socialites around her exchanged glances, and when they looked at me again, their eyes were filled with curiosity. Thanks to my original adoptive family, I have always been adept at handling such social occasions, and I skillfully struck up conversations with them. Naturally, I became the center of attention at the party, even though I already was. The end of the banquet, Mother Zhou Yaru approached, her face still carrying a trace of astonishment. Zhao Zhao, where did you learn French? Shen Jinghua stood behind her, not speaking, just looking me over from head to toe. I took half a step back, creating some distance. I picked it up from being around family, just a little understanding. Family, Shen Jiayang squeezed in. The records say you were in an orphanage and later adopted by country folk. Where did you get family who speak French? Hearing him mention the countryside, I felt a bit nostalgic for the 300-year-old castle I lived in during my childhood in England. I retorted, what's wrong with the countryside? Stop pretending. Shen Jiayang curled his lip disdainfully. There are plenty of translation apps, anyone can memorize a few lines. Does being able to speak a couple of sentences change the fact that you're just some outsider from the sticks? I ignored him and threw the question out. I heard my sister has been studying French for many years. How about giving an evaluation? Shen Qingwan was stunned for a moment, then began to speak with admiration. But then, her voice lowered, and her eyes gradually reddened. If my sister had been raised at home all along, she would surely have been more outstanding than me. In a place like the countryside, my sister must have suffered a lot. It's all my fault. I'm the one to blame. This pitiful, tearful look would likely soften most people's hearts and prompt them to offer comfort. But I'm not like most people. I raised an eyebrow, my tone filled with curiosity. Then tell me in detail, how is it your fault? My adoptive parents only adopted me from an adoption agency, and they don't know much about my past experiences. This time I returned to my home country to search for my biological family. I also had the intention of uncovering the truth. Shen Qingwan clearly didn't expect me to ask this. She choked up, her face flushed with an unnatural redness. Shen Jiayang immediately shielded her behind him. Sister, don't pay her any mind. What does it have to do with you? It's all the fault of those two human traffickers. They've been in prison for a long time. Oh, and who are those two human traffickers? Shen Qingwan's face paled, looking somewhat embarrassed. Enough, Shen Jinghua interrupted sternly, his expression impatient. There's no need to bring up the past. The sins of the parents should not be visited upon the children. Qingwan's parents have already received the punishment they deserved, so it was human traffickers who kidnapped your daughter, and you're raising their daughter without holding a grudge. How magnanimous. Shen Qingwan, knowing she was in the wrong, changed her tone and sobbed. I'm sorry for my sister. Now that she's back, I should leave. The Shen family naturally disagreed, no matter how they tried to persuade or hold her back. Shen Qingwan just kept shaking her head, her tears falling even more fiercely, as if she had suffered the greatest injustice. I stood far away, eating a small cake while watching the drama unfold. If Shen Qingwan were truly willing to leave, the Shen family would collapse immediately. Just moments ago, she was acting like the mistress of the house, but now she's clever enough to know how to retreat in order to advance. Shen Jiayang was clearly following Shen Wanqing's lead. Rushing forward in a few quick steps and slapping the cake out of my hand. It's all because of you. As soon as you came back, you drove my sister away. You jinx, get out of here. I lowered my gaze to glance at my cream-covered fingertips, then leisurely pulled out a silk handkerchief to wipe them clean. Seeing this, Shen Jiayang reached out to snatch it, his shouting growing even louder. Did you hear me? Get out. Snap. A crisp slap echoed through the hall. I withdrew my slightly numb hand. This one is for laying hands on an elder. You dare hit me, you wretched. Snap. This is to teach you to watch your mouth. Shen Zhao, you're crazy. Zhou Yaru rushed over to try to protect him. I raised my hand and pushed Shen Jiayang aside. Slap, 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 wasting food, making loud noises, losing all sense of decorum, and showing a complete lack of upbringing. As your older sister, I am disciplining you. I let go, releasing the stunned Shen Jiayang, and asked. From the moment I entered until now, how have I tried to drive her away? Did I hold a knife to her neck and force her to leave? Or should I have smashed her things, taken her room, and yelled, get out, like you did? With each word, Shen Qingwan's face grew paler. From start to finish, she was the one crying. She was the one who said she wanted to leave. I turned to the guests and spread my hands. Everyone, please judge for yourselves. Where exactly did I force her? In the dead silence. A child's voice rang out. Mom, I think Sister Zhao Zhao is so pitiful. In this circle, everyone is shrewd. What kind of tricks haven't they seen? Inquisitive or knowing gazes fell upon Shen Qingwan. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. It wasn't that her acting was good or her methods were clever. It was that people's hearts were biased from the start. it's all my fault, Shen Qingwan suddenly screamed hysterically, then rushed upstairs in tears. I'll leave right now. Zhou Yaru wanted to chase after her, but Shen Jinghua stopped her sharply. Stay where you are. If she wants to leave, let her leave. She panicked. Jinghua, don't take it out on the child. Qingwan has never left home since she was little. Where could she go at this late hour? Shen Jiayang's eyes were bloodshot, glaring at me fiercely, his gaze toward Shen Qingwan's retreating figure filled with panic. Wait a moment. I raised my voice and said, this banquet tonight was specially arranged by my sister for me, to celebrate our reunion. Now that you're leaving on your own, not only do I feel uneasy, but if word gets out, people might think the vast Shen family can't even accommodate one more daughter. Shen Jinggua's expression shifted slightly. I continued to persuade. Father was just momentarily agitated. Sister, please don't be willful anymore. We're a family. What matter can't be discussed properly. As the words fell, the guests chimed in one after another. Shen Qingwan stood there, unsure whether to leave or stay. I softly instructed the servant, take the young lady back to her room to freshen up. The maid, taking the hint, gently guided her upstairs, half supporting and half urging her along. Shen Jiayang and Zhou Yaru quickly followed them up. I turned and gave a slight bow to the guests. Just a bit of family business. I apologize for the embarrassment. Please forgive any shortcomings in our hospitality. Someone chimed in with a smile. Not at all, Mr. Shen, your daughter really takes after you. Young but steady in handling things. She's a good kid. Shen Jinghua stood beside me, his anger and awkwardness melting away amid the flattery. He glanced at me from the corner of his eye and began chatting with the guests. Shen Qingwan didn't bring up moving out again, instead showing caution and eagerness to please in every way. For instance, she deliberately got up early to personally prepare breakfast. Although Shen Jinghua didn't say a word, the sternness in his brow softened slightly. When he saw Zhou Yaru holding her reddened hand and exclaiming in pain, he finally spoke up. Your hands are meant for playing the piano. Leave these tasks to the servants from now on. For example, when she took the initiative to serve me porridge, Shen Jiayang was about to flare up, but she gently shut him down with a line. Didn't you insist on me feeding you when you were little? She then reminisced about old, amusing stories, chatting and laughing warmly. For instance, she offered to give up her own room for me. Noticing my simple attire, she thoughtfully added, I still have some unused clothes and jewelry. If you don't mind, sister, they're all yours. Sounds good. I set down my utensils and accepted it openly. Shen Qingwan's smile froze at the corner of her mouth, and she remained silent for a long time. What's wrong? I turned to her, my tone innocent. Could it be that my sister was just being polite and not sincere? Her face turned slightly pale. How could that be? However, I'm not used to using things that others have used before. Mom and Dad, can the room be redecorated according to my preferences? As for clothes and jewelry, just get them according to the standards for my sister and brother. As for the things my sister no longer uses, if they're not needed, why not donate them in the Shen family's name? There have been recent disasters, so it would be a good deed. Shen Jinghua glanced at my face and remained silent for a few seconds. Shen Jiayang was about to step forward but was stopped by his raised hand, making his stance clear. After expressing my thanks, I left the dining room. When I returned to my room, my phone vibrated. A message from Mom. My little pony, Dawn, is about to give birth and is waiting for me to come back to throw a party for it. My fingers slid across the screen, a wide smile curling at the corners of my mouth as I replied, I'll be back soon. I made an excuse to go out to buy some clothes. Shen Qingwan also came along. She nestled close to Zhou Yaru and cautiously said, I'll go too. You don't mind, do you? Sister, Zhou Yaru smiled and smoothed things over. Qingwan has a piano performance and needs to dress appropriately. With this reason, Zhou Yaru picked out 3 luxurious gowns for Shen Qingwan in a row, pointed out several more ready-to-wear outfits, and piled up bags, shoes, and accessories almost like a small mountain. I strolled leisurely, my gaze drawn to a diamond necklace. Just as I asked the salesperson to take it out, Shen Qingwan's voice rang out from behind, Wow! This necklace is so beautiful, Mom, don't you think it matches my dress perfectly? Zhou Yaru took the necklace and naturally fastened it around her neck, nodding in satisfaction. The salesperson quietly reminded her, Mrs. Shen, this is a one-of-a-kind piece, and Miss Shen Zhao picked it out first. Shen Qingwan's face flashed with confusion, and she bit her lip, seemingly too afraid to speak. Zhou Yaru immediately furrowed her brows. looked at me, and said in a tone that seemed perfectly natural, Xiao Xiao, your skin tone isn't as fair as Qingwan's, so it wouldn't suit you anyway. Why not just let her have it? I have a healthy wheatish complexion, stand at 173 centimeters tall, and carry myself with an upright posture. A different kind of beauty compared to Shen Qingwan, but I didn't argue. This necklace is from my own brand, so the money would just flow back into my own pocket anyway. I said with a smile, sure, actually. I didn't really like it anyway, just transfer the money directly to my card, and I'll pick something out myself. I have plans with someone this afternoon, so I'll be on my way. Plans with someone? Who could you possibly have plans with in Jiangcheng? Shen Qingwan asked suspiciously. I ignored her. Once the money arrived, I turned and left. CBD rooftop restaurant. Lin Shu handed me the contract. He is my university classmate and friend, as well as the head of a subsidiary under my management. This time returning to the country, work is the main goal. After confirming the main terms, I set down the document. Help me investigate the Shen family and the original trafficking case. A flicker of understanding flashed in Lin Shu's eyes, and he immediately gave the order. At that moment, a shadow darted past behind the pillar. I stood up and walked straight over. Shen Jiayang had no time to dodge and was dragged out by me. The phone fell to the ground, the screen displaying a secretly taken photo. There was also a half-edited message. Shen Zhao is fooling around with a man outside. I picked up the phone and deleted everything. Did Shen Qingwan send you here? He stubbornly denied it, his face tense. You two were so close. What else could it be but fooling around? People see others as they see themselves. I pressed my hand on his shoulder. Apologize. He struggled a couple of times, grimacing in pain, mumbled an, I'm sorry, snatched back his phone, and ran off. Back at the seat, Lin Shu handed me the supplementary agreement. There's one more thing. He paused, his tone growing a bit more serious. The Gu group has been very active lately, constantly trying to disrupt our supply chain. Their methods aren't exactly clean. Gu Linting is a man with big ambitions, but, he didn't finish his sentence. But I understood. Gu Linting is the marriage partner that the Shen family has been actively promoting, now that I'm back. The relationship between the Shen and Gu families might become quite delicate. I didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. In the living room, Shen Qingwan was leaning against Gu Linting's shoulder, playing with the diamond necklace in her hand, smiling sweetly, accompanying Zhou Yaru and Shen Zhenghua in conversation. Shen Jiayang reined in some of his unruly behavior and sat properly to the side. I gave a slight nod, not intending to linger, but not everyone thought the same way. Gu Linting leisurely called out to me, his gaze sweeping over with a hint of indifference. I turned my head, waiting for him to continue, seemingly dissatisfied with my calmness. He snorted coldly. I heard that Miss Shen Zhao's return caused quite a stir, forcing Qingwan to even give up her room. Your parents want to make up for their biological daughter, and I understand that, but Qingwan has a gentle nature, and as her fiancé, I can't just stand by and watch her be bullied. I've encountered too many unreasonable people these past couple of days, so when I heard him speak up for Shen Qingwan, I wasn't surprised at all. Over 20 years is more than enough time for the two of them to develop a deep and sincere bond. Shen Qingwan's face flushed slightly as she leaned closer into his embrace. Brother Gu, I'm fine. Gu Linting tightened his hold on her, a faint smile curling at his lips. What belongs to you, no one can take away. Just like my arranged marriage partner, it can only be you. This statement firmly elevated Shen Qingwan's position. Shen Zhenghua's expression visibly wavered. Gu Linting seized the opportunity to suggest, regarding the room, it's best to keep things as they were. Qingwan is used to it there, and it's convenient for her to practice the piano. He lightly tapped his fingers on the tea table, his voice carrying a hint of pressure. After all, the cooperation between the Gu family and the Shen family is still progressing. Qingwan's mood is very important. Shen Zhenghua could not miss the underlying meaning and immediately looked at me, making a decision. Xiao Xiao, you can decorate the guest room downstairs however you like. Move there for now. I didn't respond, only glanced calmly at Gu Linting. He reached out to put his arm around Shen Qingwan's shoulder, comforting her. All right, don't overthink it, with me here. No one can make you feel wronged. Shen Qingwan looked up at him, not forgetting to mouth the words, you lost, to me. After Gu Linting left, Shen Qingwan blocked my door. The moment the lock clicked into place, the innocence on her face faded completely, revealing a fierce and ruthless expression. See, Mom and Dad love me. My brother adores me. Even Gu Linting only wants to marry me. What does it matter how hard you tried to come back? You're just an eyesore, a useless waste. Lin Shu sent a message, and I couldn't be bothered to waste my breath on her, but she wouldn't let it go, snatching my phone away with a look of disdain. Your poor, shabby foster parents actually raised someone as spineless as you. If I were you, I would have ended it long ago. Why aren't you dead yet? I slowly raised my eyes, looking at her slightly twisted, pretty face. Then I suddenly slapped her across the face. She raised her hand to retaliate, but I grabbed her wrist. After fiddling with it a couple of times, the brooch played her voice from just moments ago, repeating it over and over. Shen Qingwan fell silent. Why aren't you saying anything? What era is this? How can someone not know about recording? The next day, Shen Jinghua called me into his study, holding a cigar. He spread several documents out in front of me. Take a look, pick one you like. Under the light were profiles of several men, all either wealthy or noble. They were all prominent figures in Jiangcheng. But, the first one has a history of violence, the second has been divorced twice and has a string of romantic debts. After flipping through the pages one by one, I closed the file. Shen Jinghua finally looked up, his gaze devoid of warmth. None of them are satisfactory. He took a puff of his cigar, slowly exhaling the smoke. Shen Zhao, I thought you were a smart person. A smart person knows how to choose. He didn't say more, but the meaning was clear. He only looks at who has the higher value. The subtle favoritism over the past 2 days is merely because there is profit to be gained. If I refuse to be a compliant bargaining chip, then rather than betting on an unknown variable, it's better to bet on someone who has been watched growing up. It seems that growing up in an environment filled with love has given me the illusion that parents naturally love their children, and it has also made me too kind. I reached out and extinguished his cigar. Mr. Shen, are you in such a hurry to sell your daughter because of the land in the west of the city, or the shipment detained by customs, or is it because Shen Corporation's working capital can't even last until next month? Shen Jinggua's face suddenly changed drastically. What nonsense are you talking about? Whether it's nonsense or not, you know in your heart. However, I can point you in the right direction. I took out my phone and turned the screen toward him. The European count likes to adopt young and handsome sons. The Middle Eastern prince prefers East Asian faces. Oh, and this one doesn't mind age and is the most generous with his offers. Under Shen Jinggua's piercing gaze, I spoke nonchalantly. Take a look, pick one you like. A smart person knows how to choose. I had just returned to my room when a knock sounded at the door. Zhou Yara stood outside the door, holding a plate of cut fruit, her movements cautious and careful. Zhao Zhao, can mom come in? Her voice was soft, carrying a hint of ingratiating hesitation. I stepped aside to let her in. She placed the fruit platter on the coffee table, her fingers twisting together, hesitating several times as if wanting to speak but holding back. Please, speak your mind. Zhou Yaro sat down across from me. Just now, I heard everything outside the study. Zhao Zhao, mom didn't know. Mom really didn't know. Didn't know what? I asked. Didn't know the Shen family is on the verge of bankruptcy, or didn't know Shen Jinghua plans to sell his daughter for money. She was on the verge of tears. I'm sorry, my dear. I just feel sorry for Qingwan. After all, she's the daughter I've raised for over 20 years. So I'm not pitiful. I interrupted her. Abducted by human traffickers, adopted by an orphanage, finally taken in by a foster family, only to grow up and come back to find my parents, only to discover they already have a daughter and just want to sell me for a good price. Am I not pitiful? Zhou Yaro was stunned, staring at me blankly. Mrs. Shen, I looked into her eyes and asked, word by word, if the girl standing before you today were just an ordinary girl, someone who doesn't speak French, doesn't understand social etiquette, comes from the countryside, is rustic, simple, and clumsy, would you still be sitting here now, saying, I'm sorry? She opened her mouth but couldn't speak. We all know the answer. No, if I hadn't shown my worth, if I hadn't exposed Shen Jinggua's schemes, she would probably still be enjoying a deep mother-daughter bond with Shen Qingwan, thinking that I, her troublesome daughter, had disrupted her family. Not to mention that the flattery at this moment carried a mix of sincerity and calculation. It's getting late. I stood up to see them out. I have other matters to attend to. After closing the door, a message came in from Lin Shu. Found out that pair of human traffickers were released early, and their accounts received 3 large transfers. The sender is an offshore company with a complex ownership structure. But one clue points to the Gu family, Gu Linting. It's related to him. Just as I was pondering, Lin Shu sent an invitation, it's for tomorrow night's charity gala. The Gu family, as the host, specifically extended an olive branch to our company. The next evening, I changed into my evening gown and went downstairs, just in time to run into Shen Qingwan, who was about to head out. She had deliberately dressed to dazzle today, linking arms with Zhou Yaru, her tone tinged with pride. Little sister, are you heading out too? These kinds of events require invitations. It's not that we don't want to take you, Zhou Yaru awkwardly explained. Zhao Zhao. The guest list was finalized a long time ago, back when you hadn't come home yet. I ignored them and got straight into the car. At the party, Shen Qingwan entered on the arm of Gu Linting, instantly drawing many gazes. Isn't that the fake heiress of the Shen family? I heard the real heiress has been found, so why is the engagement still on? The real heiress is dressed quite decently. But why is she keeping her distance from the Shen family? Tisk tsk. You don't know what happened at the welcome banquet that day. It seems this fake heiress is no pushover either. The buzz of discussion hummed around, but Shen Qingwan seemed not to hear it, slightly lifting her chin with a dignified smile. Only when her gaze swept over me did a trace of malice flicker in her eyes. The first auction item made its appearance. Shen Qingwan looked eagerly at Gu Linting, who understood her intention and bid on the broken diamond brooch, personally pinning it on her. The murmurs in the room immediately subsided by more than half. Shen Qingwan touched the brooch and cast a triumphant glance in my direction. I didn't notice, my gaze fixed on an impressionist painting as I raised my paddle to bid. Shen Qingwan leaned in and whispered a few words into Gu Linting's ear, and the two immediately followed with a higher bid. After realizing this, I would stop just short each time I raised the bid, keeping Gu Linting's competitive spirit on edge. He was completely riled up, raising his paddle again and again, and just as the price was getting absurdly high, I suddenly backed out. Gu Linting had no choice but to grit his teeth and buy the painting at an exorbitant price. No one knew that this painting was the work of my adopted sister. I had originally intended to bid it back, but remembering her words, when you meet a sucker, you can't let them go, I simply used a little trick to drive up the price. From now on, I'll get involved in anything they set their sights on. After a few rounds, Gu Linting had spent a considerable amount of money, and his expression grew increasingly unpleasant, until the final auction item made its entrance. It was a pigeon blood red necklace, with a starting bid that was shockingly high. When I gave up raising my paddle, Shen Qingwan couldn't hide a smug, mocking smile. I admit defeat. My money was earned through hard work. It can't just be blown away by the wind. But there were still people bidding against Gu Linting. Every time he made a bid, the person on the other end of the phone would always add 2 million more. In the end, the mysterious buyer took the necklace home for 120 million, as the entire room was speculating about the buyer's identity. The staff member walked toward me, holding the necklace. Miss Shen, Mr. Norton has entrusted us to deliver this to you. He said he hopes you enjoy yourself tonight. The entire hall was in an uproar. Norton, the European financial group. He just gave her the necklace like that. What is the background of this daughter of the Shen family? I took the box and smiled without changing my expression. Thank him for me. But inside, I was screaming in embarrassment. My adoptive father must have known everything. The auction ended in a delicate atmosphere. The car had just arrived home, and Shen Zhenguo was already waiting at the door. He quickly stepped forward, eagerly opened the car door, and probed, Zhao Zhao, what is your relationship with Mr. Norton? As the words left his mouth, he seemed to realize they were too direct and switched to a sorrowful tone. The cross-border business between the Shen and Gu families has encountered some issues. The Shen family is on the verge of collapse now. Only by aligning with the Norton group can we revive ourselves. Zhao Zhao, you must help your father. Suddenly felt a hint of the, when the weather turns cold, the king falls, vibe. I shook my head. For the Shen family to have come this far, they should first look for the reasons within themselves. Shen Zhengguo's face instantly darkened, and his tone hardened a bit. He gave you such an expensive necklace, so your relationship must be quite close. Asking him to help the family should be a piece of cake, shouldn't it? No, he lowered his voice, coaxing. Gu Linting has spoken to me. He said that as long as you're willing to help facilitate this cooperation, the Gu family can change the arranged marriage partner. I looked up at him. Do you mean for me to act as a matchmaker and have Gu Linting marry me? You are a daughter of the Shen family, and you should contribute to the family. Has Mr. Shen forgotten that Gu Linting is Shen Qingwan's fiancé? I will handle Qingwan's side. Shen Zhenguo spoke with near indifference. After all, She is not a biological daughter of the Shin family, but you are different. You are the true heiress of the Shin family. Enough, I cut him off. First, I have zero interest in Gu Linting. Second, I won't help with this. Since you've enjoyed the benefits the family brings, you must contribute to it, Shin Jingguo growled. I sneered. How many days have I been back in this family? I turned and went back to my room. In the shadows of the corridor, Shen Qingwan stood there, clearly having heard everything. She stared at me intently, her voice squeezed through gritted teeth. Sister, you really have some skills, starting to steal my fiancé now. Don't worry. I walked past her. I have no interest in someone like Gu Linting. Early the next morning, outside the Shen family's gate, chaos had already erupted. Two middle-aged men and women, looking haggard and with shifty eyes, were pushing and shoving with the security guard. Shen Qingwan probably ran out upon hearing the commotion. Now frozen under the porch, the woman spotted her at a glance and shrieked, Wan Qing, you're living the good life. Not caring if we live or die, if it weren't for your mother. Could you have become the Shen family's young lady? Her voice was sharp and piercing. Shen Jinghua and Zhou Yaru, who had just stepped out, heard these words loud and clear. Shen Jinggua's temples throbbed with anger as he signaled the security guards to drive the man away. The man showed no fear. Instead, he spat on the ground and declared, Shen Qingwan is my own daughter. Taking her away is only right and proper. He reached out to grab her. Shen Qingwan screamed and struggled. But he silenced her with a slap. Do you look down on your old man? You're coming with me today, whether you like it or not. Zhou Yaru cried as she rushed forward. Let her go. We'll give you however much money you want. Don't touch my daughter. Money, the woman sneered, her gaze falling on me. You think you can buy my daughter with money, Mrs. Shen? If you really can't bear to part with her, why not trade her for your own flesh and blood? Zhou Yaru froze instantly. She looked at me. Then at the trembling Shen Qingwan, her lips trembling, unable to utter a single word, the two of them dragged Shen Qingwan away. Shen Jiayang, with reddened eyes, chased after them, only to be kicked away by the man. He scrambled to his feet and roared at me. Shen Zhao, was it you who sent them here? I slapped him away. Just as I picked up my phone, a call came through. Gu Linting's voice came through with a smile. Miss Shen Zhao, are you satisfied with this show? This is just a small token of my sincerity. As long as you say the word, the Gu family can help you clear away all these rotten people and messy affairs. We cooperate, and it's a win-win situation. Isn't that good? But you're pretty rotten too. After saying that, I hung up the phone without changing my expression, then urged Lin Shu, speed up the process with the Gu family. At 11 o'clock that night, the Shen family's phone rang. Shen Jiayang rushed over to answer it. Listened for a moment, and his expression suddenly changed. What? Send me the address. I'll be right there. He roared. If anything happens to my sister, you won't get off easy either. The phone slammed down heavily, and he grabbed his car keys, dashing out the door. An hour later, Shen Jiayang rushed into the emergency room, carrying Shen Qingwan, who was covered in blood. Shen Zhao, it was her. She harmed me. Her breath was faint. Her voice filled with venom. She forced me. She took everything from me. Shen Jiayang lowered his head, holding the person in his arms tightly, his voice trembling. Qingwan, it's okay, I'm here. The doctor will be here soon. Just hold on. He carefully placed Shen Qingwan on the hospital bed, watching the nurse bandage her wounds while softly comforting her over and over. In the early morning, the light in the emergency room finally went out. Shen Qingwan was wheeled out, unconscious and breathing weakly. The doctor said she had lost too much blood, and the emotional stress had triggered a stress reaction, requiring rest and quiet. Shen Jiayang looked at the lifeless Shen Qingwan on the hospital bed, his anger and hatred driving him to drive home. He kicked the door open with one foot. In the living room, I was sitting on the sofa reading documents. Shen Jiayang rushed over with bloodshot eyes, grabbed my collar, and roared, Shen Zhao. Was it you? Did you harm Sister Qingwan? Tell me, let go. He was intimidated by my gaze, yet refused to release his grip. If you don't tell me, I won't let go. I'm telling you, I heard you say you were going to investigate those two traffickers that day. I grabbed his wrist and applied a bit of force. He grunted in pain, and his hand involuntarily loosened. Idiot. I pushed him away and opened the phone recording. Want the truth? Listen for yourself. Gu Linting's voice exploded in Shen Jiayang's ear. This is just a small token of my sincerity. Shen Jiayang staggered back 2 steps. This is impossible, liar. Gu Linting never mentioned Sister Qingwan. I put away my phone and made a hand gesture, spreading my fingers. He shrank back, closing his mouth tightly. As for the reason she took her own life, you should think it over carefully. After hearing this, Shen Jiayang walked away. Trembling, I snorted coldly. Shen Qingwan either knew the truth and was utterly despondent, or she deliberately harmed herself to take a gamble. 3 days later, Shen Qingwan was discharged from the hospital. Her wrist was wrapped in thick gauze, her face as pale as paper, and she seemed utterly lifeless. Zhou Yara stayed by her side without leaving for a moment, as if trying to make up for the guilt from that day. Shen Jinghua, however, was unusually silent. He locked himself in the study, the ashtray filled with cigar butts. Things at the company seemed to be getting worse. The bank's collection calls came one after another, shareholders were secretly colluding, and even the vice president who had been with him for over a decade had submitted his resignation. The Shen family's ship was about to sink. That afternoon, Shen Jinghua suddenly knocked on my office door. Since Shen Qingwan got injured, I haven't returned to the Shen family home. I focused on handling work, wanting to return to Europe as soon as possible. I was starting to miss my family a bit. Shen Jinghua stood at the door, his back straight, but the red veins in his eyes and the stubble on his chin betrayed his disheveled state. Zhao Zhao, his voice was hoarse. Dad wants to talk to you. I let him in. He sat on the sofa, his hands clasped together, his knuckles turning white. After a long silence, he finally spoke. The Shen group can't hold on any longer. The land in the west of the city was taken by the Gu family. There's a huge fine from customs. He paused, his voice growing even hoarser. The bank loan is due next week. So, I asked. Shen Jinghua raised his head, his eyes fixed intently on me. The Norton Consortium. If you could just make an introduction, get Mr. Norton to invest some money, even just sign a letter of intent for cooperation, the bank would ease up, and all the other problems could be put on hold. I made it very clear, I won't help. Shen Zhao, he suddenly stood up. His voice rising sharply, I am your father. Shen Corporation is the lifelong effort of the Shen family. Are you really so cold-blooded, just watching it collapse? Mr. Shen, I also stood up, meeting his gaze. Shen Corporation is collapsing because of your poor decisions, not because of me. If you want to hold someone accountable, perhaps you should take a look in the mirror. Shen Jinggua's face flushed a deep, purplish red. His chest heaved violently, as if he were about to erupt at any moment, but in the end, he took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. Fine, fine, he nodded, revealing a twisted smile. You don't have to help. He turned and walked out, stopping at the door without looking back. Come home for dinner tomorrow. Your mother misses you a lot. The main gate of the Shen family's old house was slightly ajar, and the courtyard was eerily quiet. I pushed the door open and had just stepped into the dimly lit entrance hall when a pungent, foul odor hit me. Before I could react, my limbs went weak, my vision went dark, and I was instantly pinned down by someone lurking in the shadows. Tie her up. It was Shen Jinggua's voice, filled with a desperate and ruthless determination. When I regained consciousness, I was already tightly bound to the armrest of the living room sofa. Shen Jinghua sat opposite me, his eyes bloodshot, his face displaying the madness of a gambler. Shen Zhao, he leaned in close, his spittle nearly hitting my face. Make the call. Call Norton right now. Tell him to inject funds into the Shen family immediately, otherwise, you'll be buried with the Shen family. Shen Jinghua, my voice was slightly hoarse from the medication, but my gaze was clear. You're insane. I'm not insane, he roared, veins bulging in his neck. You forced me into this. You're Norton's adopted daughter, holding immense wealth in your hands, yet you just stood by and watched the Shen family die. Today, I'm going to make him understand that his precious daughter is in my hands. Just then, the door was kicked open. Gu Linting stormed in with 2 black-clad bodyguards, his movements swift and precise. In just a few moves, he had Shen Jinghua pinned to the ground. A heavy blow landed on the back of Shen Jinggua's neck, and he collapsed without even a grunt. Miss Shen Zhao. Gu Linting finally turned to me, leisurely adjusting his cuffs, a perfectly measured look of concern on his face. You must have been frightened. It's fortunate I arrived in time. He walked over to me, leaned down, and his shadow fell over me. Miss Shen Zhao, how do you plan to repay the life-saving favor? I look up, our eyes met, and I was met with his undisguised scheming. How about, he said, his fingertip lightly brushing my cheek, offering yourself in return, Gu Linting. I turned my head to avoid his touch. You can only fool idiots like Shen Jinghua. His smile faded slightly. a shadow passing through his eyes, soon replaced by an even deeper greed. Stubborn, he straightened up, his gaze sweeping over me boldly. Once Miss Shenjiao is carrying my child, she'll naturally learn to be obedient. My back stiffened. Gu Linting, a piercing scream suddenly erupted at the stairwell. Shen Qingwan stood there, disheveled and pale-faced. Clutching a fruit knife tightly in her hand, she glared fiercely at Gu Linting, her eyes filled with hatred. You promised you would marry me, that you would make me the glorious Mrs. Gu. How dare you betray me? How dare you betray me? She screamed, rushing down the stairs recklessly, aiming straight for Gu Linting's back. Gu Linting swiftly sidestepped, grabbing her slender wrist and twisting it harshly. The fruit knife clattered to the ground. Shen Qingwan cried hysterically, so you've been using me all along. All that talk about not looking down on me was just a lie. You just wanted to use my background to control me, to bring down the Shen family, didn't you? Not too stupid after all. Gu Linting sneered, lifting his foot to kick her in the chest. Keeping you around until now was only for that purpose, now that the Shen family has fallen. It's time for you to get lost. He glanced at Shen Qingwan on the ground with disgust and raised his hand to signal, take her away too. The bodyguard stepped forward, about to act, when I shouted coldly, who dares to move? Gu Linting raised an eyebrow. Miss Shenjiao, you can't even protect yourself right now. At that moment, he saw a laser dot appear on his bodyguard's forehead, and his expression changed drastically. Lin Shu appeared just in time with a group of people. Miss. I untied the rope from the back of my hand. Watching Gu Linting's panicked expression, she slowly curved the corners of her lips. Mr. Gu, let me give you an old saying, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The turmoil in Jiangchen gradually subsided. 3 months later, Shen Jinghua and Gu Linting were imprisoned for kidnapping, illegal detention, and multiple economic crimes. Zhou Yara moved out of the Shen family's old mansion before it was auctioned off. With limited funds, she rented a small apartment. After the kidnapping incident, she came to the company to see me, carrying a thermos of soup she had made herself. I had my secretary escort her downstairs, and she took the thermos back untouched. Shen Qingwan was sent to a sanatorium. The nurses said she was mostly quiet, but occasionally she would suddenly ask, has Brother Gu come? Then she would shake her head and burst into tears, crying, liar. Shen Jiayang seemed like a changed person. He set up a stall near the sanatorium, and when customers mockingly asked if he was the young master of the Shen family, he would smile and shake his head in denial. As for my company, we first acquired the Shen group, then swallowed up the Gu group. I later handed over the management to Lin Shu, seemingly becoming the sole winner. As for me, I flew back the very next day, and after embracing my family, I threw a welcome party for the little foal. At that moment, the little horse snorted and came to a halt. Ahead, the morning sun was leaping over the ridge, its golden light spreading across the entire pasture. A new day has begun. I gently nudged the horse's flank. Let's go. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My mother was the true heiress of the Fu family, who had been lost to the outside world. It's just that by the time the Fu family found her, she was already dead. She lay on the yellow earth that had nurtured her, as quiet as if she were asleep. I watched the man I should call grandfather step out of the gleaming black car. He wore a crisp black overcoat, looking completely out of place against this expanse of yellow earth. He stood there for a long time, then turned and asked me, his tone devoid of warmth, would you like to come back with me? I nodded and said, yes. He probably thought I wanted to go back and acknowledge him as family, but that wasn't the case. When my mother was alive, she would often hold me close and point to the photos in the textbook, saying to me, sweetheart, you must go out and see the world beyond the mountains for me, for your grandfather. The Fu family is a high and solid enough stepping stone. I have to go, because I want to read the best books, attend the best universities, and see the broadest world. The road back to the Fu family is silent and long. Grandfather's profile was cold and rigid, with no desire for communication. I remained silent too, my face almost pressed against the car window, greedily gazing at the world beyond the mountains that my mother had dreamed of. So many people, so many cars, so many dazzling lights. It all made my eyes ache. The car eventually drove through a heavily guarded gate, passed along a tree-lined, eerily quiet road, and stopped in front of a pristine, grand palace-like house that I had never even seen on television. A crowd had already gathered at the entrance. The elderly woman at the forefront was dressed in a finely tailored dark green cheongsam, her hair neatly combed. She held a handkerchief, occasionally dabbing her red, swollen eyes. She must be my grandmother. Standing beside her was a middle-aged man in a suit, my uncle, Fu Yuanxiu. Next to my uncle was a tall, slender young man with chestnut-dyed hair, my cousin, Fu Wenbin. There was also a woman standing half a step behind my grandmother, affectionately holding her arm. She appeared to be in her 40s and was well-maintained. She looked at me with just the right amount of curiosity and pity in her eyes. Later, I learned that she was the one who had taken my mother's place, the fake heiress who grew up in the Fu family with all the luxury and privilege. Fu Yuanmin, and Fu Yuanmin's daughter, Du Wenling, who was the same age as me. Dressed exquisitely and looked like a little princess, Du Wenling's gaze was the most direct when she looked at me, unconcealed disdain, like a scanner, swept from my worn-out old sneakers to my faded pants, finally settling on my dry, yellowish hair. Is this my sister's child? Her name is Sinan, right? You must be tired from the journey. Fu Yuanmin was the first to speak, her voice soft and melodious. Breaking the suffocating silence, Grandma seemed startled awake. Stepping forward with even redder eyes, my child, my poor child, you've suffered so much all these years. She reached out to take my hand, but I instinctively pulled it back, hiding it behind me. My hands are rough, with thin calluses from work, and my fingernails are stained with dirt that won't wash out, but her hands are fair and delicate, and I was afraid of hurting her. Grandma's hand froze in mid-air, the sorrow on her face solidifying for a moment, making her appear somewhat awkward. Grandpa, on the other hand, showed no expression, as if he hadn't seen the scene, and walked straight past us into the house. What are you all doing standing outside? Let's go in and talk. The living room was larger than I had imagined. I tread carefully in my worn-out, dirty sneakers. The servant silently serves the tea. The cup is so crystal clear that I dare not even reach out to touch it, afraid it might shatter at the slightest contact. My uncle sits down on the sofa opposite me, lights a cigarette, and squints as he sizes me up. How old are you? Where did you go to school before? How are your grades? 17, a sophomore in high school in town. My grades are okay. I kept my eyes down, answering briefly, at our understaffed town high school. Being at the top of the class isn't much, but in their eyes, it probably doesn't count for anything. Just okay. How okay is that? He blew out a smoke ring and pressed further. Top few in the grade, I said. Fu Wenbin beside him let out an undisguised snort of laughter. Top in the town. Then she'd probably be at the bottom here, right? Our school is a nationally key institution. Du Wenling immediately whispered to her mother, Fu Yuanmin, in a voice just loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom, look at her shoes, and those pants, so ugly, they even seem to have a smell. Fu Yuanmin gently patted her. Wenling, don't talk nonsense. Sinan just came from the countryside, and it's normal for her to be a bit dusty and dirty after the long journey. Then, she gave me a helpless smile. Sinan, don't mind it. If you need anything in the future, just tell your aunt, and I'll prepare it for you. Aunt, she called out so naturally, as if she really were my mother's own sister. Grandma kept looking at me with sorrowful eyes, murmuring, alike, truly alike, these eyes and brows, exactly like mine when I was young. Grandfather sat in the single-seat sofa at the head of the table, holding a newspaper in his hand, and did not participate in the conversation from start to finish, but his gaze occasionally fell on me. That look was not like looking at a granddaughter, but more like examining an asset. I straightened my back and let them scan me. I know I resemble my mother, especially in these eyes. This is perhaps my only bargaining chip here. Du Wenling has regarded me as her number one imaginary rival almost from the moment I stepped through the Fu family's gate. She believes I will steal everyone's attention and take away the affection that should rightfully be hers. The dinner table was absurdly long, covered with exquisite tableware and dishes whose names I couldn't even pronounce. I followed their example, eating quietly and taking small bites of the small piece of fried fish on the plate in front of me. It tasted good, but I couldn't savor it. Du Wenling rolled her eyes and deliberately asked me in an innocent tone, Sinan, did you take a plane when you came here? Was it your first time? How did it feel? I swallowed the food in my mouth and answered truthfully, yes, it was my first time. It's amazing how quickly it can fly to such faraway places. She immediately widened her eyes dramatically and raised her voice. Wow, Is this really your first time on a plane? What about high-speed trains? Have you ever taken one? I shook my head. Her tone grew even more exaggerated. Then have you ever taken the subway? Don't tell me you haven't even ridden the subway before. That's just unbelievable. But I still answered truthfully, I've never ridden one. She let out a scornful laugh. Country bumpkin. The table fell silent instantly. Fu Wenbin lowered his head, his shoulders shaking suspiciously, clearly holding back laughter. Uncle obviously kicked him, but didn't say a word. Fu Yuanmin shook her head with a seemingly helpless expression, giving Du Wenling a reproachful look, but ultimately indulged her. Grandma opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but after glancing at Grandpa's expression, she ultimately remained silent. I put down my chopsticks, looked up, and stared at her. Then have you ever seen the land? Du Wenling was about to blurt out, who hasn't seen that, when I cut her off. Not the kind of neatly trimmed, turf-covered land you see outside. It's the most primitive kind, the kind that turns muddy when it rains, cracks open in drought, teems with all sorts of strange insects, and is riddled with holes dug by field mice. The smile on Du Wenling's face froze. I looked at her and continued calmly, do you know how potatoes grow? I'm not talking about the kind planted for experiments and observation, but the ones that grow in the ground. Do you know how many potatoes you can dig up with a single hoe during the autumn harvest? Do you know how rapeseed and wheat growing halfway up the mountain are harvested? Have you ever seen cow dung drying on the ground? Have you ever slept on a heated brick bed, the kind that's warmed by burning cow dung in the winter? Have you ever seen a spring? Have you ever drunk water flowing from a spring? My barrage of questions turned Du Wenling's face from red to pale. Her lips trembled, but not a single word came out. Everyone else at the table was also stunned. Even my grandfather, who had always been expressionless, lifted his eyes from above the newspaper, his gaze settling heavily upon me. I am aware of all this. I spoke each word deliberately, my gaze sweeping over Du Wenling and the other members of the Fu family at the table. The Northwest is my home. There are no planes, no high-speed trains, and certainly no subways there, only truck after truck, transporting the produce from the fields to the dining tables where we eat today. These things have nurtured countless people like me. So, is it funny that I've never ridden the subway or a high-speed train? I used to think people living in big cities were all amazing, but now it seems they're not much different from me. After saying that, I didn't look at any of them again. Instead, I picked up my chopsticks and continued eating the slightly cooled fish on my plate. The dining table fell into a silence that was almost frozen. Grandfather looked at me deeply, his gaze complex and inscrutable, as if he were truly seeing me for the first time. After that, Fu Yuanmin's way of looking at me changed. Whenever my uncle occasionally inquired about my studies and showed a bit of interest, Fu Yuanmin would immediately and subtly steer the conversation toward Du Wenling's newly learned piano pieces or ballet, emphasizing Du Wenling's upbringing and talent. I didn't know where her sense of crisis came from, nor did I want to find out, because I don't care about any of this. My world is very small, so small that it can only hold books and practice problems. Everything here has nothing to do with me. My only goal is to seize this opportunity and study as hard as I can. I was assigned to class 20, the so-called regular class. Naturally, Du Wenling and Fu Wenbin were placed in the elite class with the best teachers. Du Wenling spared no effort in spreading the word about my background at school. Soon, almost everyone knew that a new transfer student from a remote, impoverished area had arrived in class 20. A country bumpkin, she and her clique became the vanguard of school bullying. When I went to the library, they would rush to occupy all the empty seats, then watch smugly as I left with my books. When I went to the cafeteria to eat, they would accidentally bump into me, knocking over my tray and splashing soup all over me. They would deliberately talk loudly when I passed by. Look at her shabby appearance. What kind of clothes is she wearing? Did she pick them up from a garbage dump? Ha ha ha, at least she has a school uniform. Otherwise she'd have to run around naked, a wild chicken from the mountains, coming to the city and thinking she can turn into a phoenix. Country bumpkin, get back to your mountain village. They would even write nasty words on my desk with markers. I never responded, and I never told on them. I would just silently pick up my books, wipe the desk clean, remove the stains from my clothes, and then dive headfirst into a sea of problems. Their provocations and bullying were like punching a reef. It only hurt their own hands and had no effect. Du Wenling mocked me for being a quail, unable to even speak. She even turned around and egged everyone on, saying I didn't dare to argue back. But my silence isn't cowardice. I truly just don't want to bother, nor do I have the time to bother. Perhaps they cannot understand why these methods, which could easily crush other girls, have no effect on me. Because they don't know that what I experienced growing up was far more brutal than these malicious words and childish tricks. Hunger, cold, the pain of losing loved ones, the hardship of struggling for survival. Life has long since tempered my heart to be unbreakable, and studying is the only straw I can grasp to change my fate. I will never let go just because of the buzzing of a few flies. In the first weekly exam, when the results came out, I ranked first in class, 20. Not only did I far exceed the second place by dozens of points, but my scores in each subject were even higher than many students in the elite classes. When Du Wenling found out, her face turned extremely ugly, and she didn't even eat dinner properly when she got home. Fu Yuanmin comforted her softly, but her words were meant for others to hear. It's just a small in-class test. It doesn't prove anything. She probably only learned a limited amount back in the town. Just repeatedly doing practice questions and rote memorization. As the difficulty of the knowledge increases later on, if her thinking can't keep up, she'll naturally fall behind. Our Wenling has high overall quality and strong staying power. My uncle, Fu Yuanxiu, was a bit surprised when he saw my report card and, for once, said something nice. It seems this mind still follows the roots of our Fu family. Not too foolish after all. Fu Yuanmin immediately chimed in. Her smile gentle and graceful. Yes, brother, but Wenling's piano teacher also praised her for having a natural talent and making great progress this time. This child is just too pure-hearted, unlike some children who are overly calculating. A month later, the more significant monthly exam arrived. On the day the results were announced, a huge red honor roll was posted in the most prominent spot at the school gate. At the top of the grade-wide ranking list, the first column clearly read: First place, Lin Sinan, Class, 20, total score, 728. The whole school was buzzing with excitement. A transfer student from the poorest region in the Northwest, placed in an ordinary class, had soared straight to the top of the grade. The score is ridiculously high. This is practically a myth. The homeroom teacher excitedly called me into the office, and the grade leader also came. Unable to contain the joy on their face, Du Wenling and her friends crowded in front of the rankings. Staring at that glaring name and score, their faces pale as if they had seen a ghost. I took that report card back to the Fu family. Fu Wenbin looked at me, and for the first time, there was no trace of the previous disdain in his eyes. Du Wenling, on the other hand, shut herself in her room and didn't even show up for dinner. Fu Yuanmin forced a smile and said to her father and brother, Dad, brother, I never expected Sinan to be so promising. It seems this child has really put in a lot of hard work. Of course, it's also thanks to the Fu family's good genes. Grandfather put down the document in his hand, picked up the report card, and examined it carefully for a long time. Then he looked up and said to me slowly, What you've achieved is far better than what you said. Grandmother, on the other hand, was genuinely happy for me and eagerly kept putting food on my plate. Good child, eat more, eat more. Since then, my grandfather's attitude toward me has changed significantly. He tacitly allowed me to freely enter and leave his study, which was filled with a rich collection of books. There were many hardcover classics and professional literature there that I had never even heard of. He would occasionally chat with me, not many words, just a few sentences, but these were enough to ignite certain people's emotions. Du Wenling's targeting of me shifted from open mockery to more insidious methods. She splashed ink on my books and homework, locked me in the dark, empty gymnasium after school, and even secretly smeared strong glue on my chair. I remained silent. I quietly washed away the ink stains, recited vocabulary in the darkness, and stood through a whole day of classes. I started spending more time in the library or hiding in my room, solving practice problems. By the end of the semester, not only had my grades not slipped, but I firmly held the top spot in my grade, leaving the second place further and further behind, becoming a legend in the school that everyone looked up to. Fu Yuanmin could no longer sit still. She was no longer satisfied with competing behind the scenes or making up for Du Wenling's shortcomings. Instead, she began to appear, deeply concerned, in front of her grandmother. Mom, Sinan is smart, but don't you think she's too cold and aloof? It's been so long since she came back, yet she doesn't get close to anyone. Burying herself in books all day. I know she had a hard life before, and it's normal for her to hold some resentment, but we are family after all. She clearly sees herself as an outsider. Grandma only listened without responding. She then sighed deeply in front of my uncle. Brother, look at Sinan's grades. Even Tsinghua and Peking University might find them too low. This child has high ambitions and big dreams. Our Fu family is just a small temple. And I'm afraid we won't be able to keep such a great Buddha. In the future, she'll surely fly far away and never look back. Wenling is better. Though her grades are average, she's simple-minded, considerate, and truly treats this place as her home. She knows how to care for others. But my uncle was more clear-sighted and perceptive than I had imagined. He said to Fu Yuanmin without looking up, if you spent half the time you used to criticize me on Du Wenling's academic performance, she wouldn't be at the bottom of the class in every exam. Even if she can't get into university, the family will find a way to send her abroad to get a diploma, but at least don't let her fall too far behind. It would be embarrassing for the Fu family if word got out. In the second semester of the second year of high school, the National Middle School Mathematics Olympiad kicked off. The school organized a training team, and both Fu Wenbin and I were successfully selected. Du Wenling didn't even come close to making it through the school's internal selection. During the training camp, Fu Wenbin and his friends from the elite class clearly formed a clique, deliberately excluding me from discussions and keeping materials to themselves. I didn't mind. I was happy to have the peace and quiet. Working alone on those difficult and obscure competition problems, I actually found a kind of pure joy in them. The finals were held in another province. Before departure, Du Wenling stopped me at the stairwell, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Oh, the top student is off to bring glory to the family. I wish you a triumphant start and hope you bring back an outstanding participation award. I didn't even glance at her and walked right past. A few days later, the final results came in. I brought back a heavy gold medal for the school, ranking in the top 60 and earning a spot in the national training team. As for Fu Wenbin, he only managed to secure a bronze medal. The news spread like wildfire back to the school, causing an even bigger stir than the last monthly exam. Even the usually stern principal personally came to our class and praised me in front of all the students. I returned to the Fu family holding that shiny gold medal, and Fu Wenbin's face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot. He locked himself in his bedroom, claiming he was unwell. Grandfather held the gold medal, rubbing it repeatedly under the light. For the first time, an expression resembling a smile appeared on his face. He looked at me and only said two words, not bad. Fu Yuanmin immediately chimed in, yes, Dad. Wenbin also won a bronze medal in a national competition. Winning any award is already quite an achievement. Every child in the Fu family is outstanding. Once again, she tried to blur the lines and downplay the gap between me and Fu Wenbin, but this time, even my usually somewhat confused and soft-hearted grandmother could sense the difference. The way she looked at me was filled with genuine, undisguised pride. The gold medal from the math competition was like a clear dividing line, completely separating me from the other younger members of the Fu family. At school, no one dared to call me country bumpkin or hick to my face anymore. The once hostile gazes have now turned into envy and flattery. The teachers treat me like a precious gem, giving me priority access to all kinds of learning resources and competition opportunities. It feels as if I have gained everything overnight. However, the atmosphere inside the Fu family mansion has become even more subtle and tense than before. Uncle Fu Yuanxiu began to deliberately mention the company's ongoing projects in front of me, discussing the business landscape, and even tentatively asking if I had any interest in studying finance or business management in the future. His words hinted at the possibility of grooming me to enter the family business. This undoubtedly touched upon Fu Yuanmin's most sensitive nerve. Fu Yuanmin's sense of crisis reached its peak. The look in her eyes could no longer maintain that feigned gentleness. She accelerated the pace of paving the way for Du Wenling, frequently taking her to various socialite gatherings to learn etiquette, flower arranging, and tea ceremony, attempting to use so-called upper-class upbringing to counter the brilliance I had earned through sheer hard work. And Du Wenling, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, grew increasingly anxious and aggressive. Once, she actually barged into my room while I was away, trying to tear up the notes and error collection I had spent months organizing. I happened to return to get something and caught her at the door, grabbing her raised wrist. "What are you doing?" I shouted sharply, my gaze icy. That was the first time I had ever shown such sharp emotion in front of her. Du Wenling was startled by my gaze and the force of my grip for a moment, then began struggling even more frantically, screaming, "What are you so proud of, Lin Sinan? No matter how capable you are, What does it matter? Your surname is Lin, not Fu. Everything in the Fu family will belong to me and my brother in the future. You, an outsider, a bastard, don't even think about getting a single cent. You and your dead mother are both unworthy. Slap, a crisp slap cut off her vicious scream. It wasn't me who did it, it was Fu Yuanmin, who came running at the sound. Her face was pale, her eyes fixed intently on Du Wenling, her chest heaving violently. Wenling, what nonsense are you talking? Apologize to Sister Sinan right now. Du Wenling covered her face, looking at her mother in disbelief, then burst into tears with a loud wah, filled with grievance and resentment. I watched this farce coldly, released Du Wenling's wrist, picked up the notebook from the ground, and gently smoothed it out. Then, I looked at Fu Yuanmin and Du Wenling, who was still wailing loudly, and said calmly, I never wanted a single penny from the Fu family. What I want, I will earn myself. There's no need for you to worry about it. After saying that, I took my notebook and turned to leave. Behind me, Du Wenling screamed at me even more hysterically, you bitch, you better keep your word. In the final exams of the first semester of senior year, I once again secured the top spot in my grade with an indisputable lead. In several provincial and municipal joint exams, my ranking was among the top in the city, and I even challenged for the top spot. This caught the high attention of the school leadership. The principal, along with the grade director, even made a personal visit to my home to discuss whether it was possible to transfer my household registration from the Northwest to here before the college entrance exam, so that my academic performance could be retained at the school. They even assured that as long as my household registration was settled, the school would spare no resources to ensure my success in the college entrance exam. At dinner, my uncle was the first to bring up the topic, speaking to my grandfather. Dad, what the principal mentioned today makes sense, with Sinan's outstanding academic performance. Staying here for the college entrance exam would be the most beneficial for her personally and for our family. It's just a matter of transferring her household registration. Although the procedures are a bit troublesome, I can find someone to handle it, and it will definitely be completed before Sinan's college entrance exam. My grandmother also quickly nodded in agreement. Exactly, Yuan Xiu is right. We must quickly get Sinan's household registration sorted out. This child has suffered so much, and now she's doing so well in her studies. We can't let her be held back at this critical moment. She held my hand and patted it affectionately. Sinan, don't worry, Grandma will make sure your grandpa and uncle handle this matter properly. I was holding my chopsticks and hadn't even had a chance to speak when I heard a loud clatter. It's Fu Yuanmin. The silver chopsticks in her hand fell to the ground as she abruptly stood up, her face turning pale. No, I don't agree. Her voice was so sharp it had changed pitch, completely losing its usual gentleness. How can we just casually transfer the household registration? Her surname is Lin, not Fu. What right does she have to register her household under the Fu family? Du Wenling also threw down her chopsticks, rushed to Fu Yuanmin's side, and cried out in a tearful voice, That's right, Grandpa. We can't let her transfer her household registration. If she transfers it over, will she start taking our things? Will everything in the family have to be shared with her from now on? Will you and Mom abandon me and Mom? Grandma tried to calm them down. Yuanmin, Wenling, don't get worked up. This is just for Sinan's convenience during the college entrance exams. What convenience for the exams? It's all just excuses. Fu Yuanmin was like a lit firecracker, completely losing control. She pointed at my nose, her eyes bloodshot. She's been scheming all along. First, she pretended to be pitiful to get in, then she studied desperately to show off. And now she's finally revealed her true colors. She just wants to use the college entrance exam as an excuse to legitimately cling to the Fu family and take everything that belongs to me and Wenling. Dad, Mom, brother, you can't be so foolish. In the following days, the Fu family was plunged into utter turmoil. Fu Yuanmin and Du Wenling, mother and daughter, began an endless cycle of crying, pestering, and accusations. They no longer cared about any semblance of dignity, repeatedly staging their tragic drama in the living room, the dining room, and anywhere else people were present. Fu Yuanmin tearfully recounted her years of care for her parents in the Fu family, lamenting that Du Wenling was the beloved, little cotton-padded jacket they had watched grow up, and accusing me, the outsider, of harboring ulterior motives in an attempt to overturn their lives. Du Wenling, in turn, joined her mother in accusing me of stealing the attention and affection that rightfully belonged to her. They even sought out my grandmother, leveraging her affection for Fu Yuanmin to plead with her through both soft and hard tactics. My grandmother was left utterly exhausted and torn, almost to the point of falling ill and taking to her bed. Finally, on a weekend afternoon, this farce reached its climax. I don't know what Fu Yuanmin said to Grandma again, but I heard intense arguing from upstairs, followed by Du Wenling's terrified cries. Frowning, I put on my headphones, trying to block out the noise. Suddenly, the commotion outside grew louder, mixed with the servants' exclamations. I took off my headphones and walked to the window, looking outside, only to find Fu Yuanmin actually dragging Du Wenling up to the rooftop of the main building. Her hair was disheveled, her face wild with madness. As she screamed at my grandfather, uncle, and grandmother, who had rushed downstairs upon hearing the commotion, "You're forcing me, aren't you? You're all forcing me, aren't you? Fine, fine, if you dare to transfer Lin Xinan's household registration today, I'll jump right off here. I'll take Wenling with me. I want everyone to see how you drove us mother and daughter to our deaths." Du Wenling was terrified out of her wits, clinging desperately to the railing, crying so hard she nearly fainted. Downstairs was in chaos. Grandma was so frightened she nearly fainted, supported by the servants, her voice trembling as she cried out, "Yuanmin, Wenling, come down quickly, don't do anything foolish, Mom promises you, Mom will agree to anything." Uncle, on the other hand, was livid, shouting sternly, "Fu Yuanmin, what are you doing? Come down at once. What kind of behavior is this?" Grandfather stood at the front, looking up at the mother and daughter on the balcony, his face dark and silent. And just at that moment, a lazy voice came from the terrace next to me. "Jump, it's Fu Wenbin." He had somehow wandered over there at some point, holding a can of cola in his hand, his gaze coldly watching the commotion, his tone filled with impatience. "If jumping from there could really kill both of you, then it would mean you two are truly destined to die today, and not even a god could save you, just in time, every time the exam results come out. My friends always ask if the one ranked last in the grade is my sister. It's really embarrassing." His words were like a knife, instantly cutting through the somber atmosphere in the room. Fu Yuanmin's wailing came to an abrupt halt, and Du Wenling's sobs caught in her throat. But soon after, they both cried even louder. My uncle, his face dark with anger, told him to get back to his room and stop causing trouble. I saw him shrug indifferently, put on his headphones, and go back to memorizing vocabulary. The farce that lasted the entire afternoon finally came to an end when Grandpa spoke up, and only then were Fu Yuanmin and Du Wenling tremblingly helped down from the rooftop. The two of them cried together as if they had suffered the greatest injustice. The storm had temporarily subsided, but the smoke of battle had not yet cleared. At dinner time, the atmosphere was extremely tense. Grandpa, who had been silent all along, finally put down his chopsticks and solemnly announced, "The matter of the household registration ends here. We won't transfer it anymore." Fu Yuanmin suddenly looked up, a flash of wild joy crossing her face, then quickly lowered her head to conceal her emotions. Grandma opened her mouth but ultimately said nothing. My uncle frowned, still wanting to persuade further, but my grandfather's decision was final. I remained quiet throughout the meal. I wasn't surprised by this outcome. In the harmony and peace of the Fu family, my grandfather's choice between that and me, an outsider, has always been clear. That evening, as I was about to continue solving practice problems, a servant came up to knock on my door, saying that my grandfather wanted to see me in his study. A bit surprised, I put down my pen and walked over. In the study, only a desk lamp was on, casting a dim, yellowish light that stretched my grandfather's shadow long across the room. He sat behind the desk and motioned for me to take a seat. "Today's events must have disturbed you. Your studies are important. You shouldn't be distracted by such matters." I remained silent, quietly waiting for him to continue. He pondered for a moment before continuing. "The household registration is a special case, so it will remain unchanged for now, but rest assured, I will take care of everything for your return to take the college entrance exam, travel arrangements, accommodation, all of it. You won't have to worry about any of that, just focus on your exams." He looked at me, his eyes carrying a complex emotion. "Also, you don't need to worry about your tuition or living expenses for the next 4 years of university. If you wish to continue your studies further, studying abroad, pursuing a master's or a PhD, no matter where you go or how much it costs, I will take care of it. The Fu family will provide everything you need for your future." This is probably the greatest extent of compensation and commitment he can offer. in his view, using money to make up for emotional neglect and unfair decisions. I listened quietly, then shook my head. Thank you for your kindness, but it's not necessary, then. Under his slightly stunned gaze, I placed a small notebook on the desk and pushed it toward him. What is this? He asked. I explained calmly. This is a record of all my expenses since I came to the Fu family. It includes food, accommodation, the clothes, stationery, books, everything you, grandma, uncle, and auntie have bought for me. I've converted everything I could think of into market prices and recorded it. Grandfather picked up the notebook but didn't open it immediately. He looked up at me, his gaze complex. You've been keeping track of this all along. Yes, I met his gaze calmly and nodded. When I chose to come back with you, it wasn't to take advantage, nor was it to acknowledge family ties. I just wanted to study. I believe you can provide me with the best educational resources, giving me the opportunity to get into the top universities. And now, that goal has largely been achieved. I am grateful for everything the Fu family has given me. But I don't want to owe these material expenses. I paused, feeling a tightness in my throat, but continued speaking, because this is what I've always wanted to tell him, and what I feel I should say. In fact, my mother never resented you for leaving her behind when you returned to the city as educated youth, not even until the day she passed away. I saw my grandfather's pupils contract sharply, his hand holding the notebook trembling slightly, but in her heart. The Grandpa Lin who adopted her when she was most helpless and alone, and who did everything he could to raise her, was her real father, her only support, and he is also the only grandfather I have ever had in my life. I can rely on my own abilities to move forward. As for this money, I pointed at the notebook. Once I get into university and have the capability, I will repay it as soon as possible. Then, I stood up and gave him a slight bow. I won't disturb your rest any further. With that, I turned and left the study, gently closing the door behind me. As the college entrance exam drew nearer day by day, the matter of me returning to my hometown to take the test was also put on the agenda. Unexpectedly, it was my uncle who was responsible for sending me back this time. On the morning of departure, the entrance of the Fu family mansion was unusually crowded with people. Fu Yuanmin, holding a rather exquisite-looking gift bag, stepped forward and spoke to me with concern. Sinan, are you leaving already? I've prepared some local specialties for you, snacks, dried fruits, and the like. Take them back and share them with the villagers who once looked after you. Consider it a token of our Fu family's gratitude. Her words were beautifully spoken, yet there was little warmth in her eyes. Du Wenling stood behind her mother, arms crossed, not bothering to hide her schadenfreude. That's right, Sinan. You'd better keep a good mindset when you go back. Don't let psychological imbalance or difficulty adjusting to the environment affect your performance on the college entrance exam. You've been the top student for so long. It would be a real joke if you messed up at the last minute. She deliberately drew out her words, her malice practically dripping from them. Before I could even open my mouth, an impatient voice cut in. Du Wenling, Fu Wenbin had walked over at some point, still looking as lazy as ever. He gave Du Wenling a once-over and sneered. You should worry about your own scores first. Did you even get 300 points on this mock exam? With grades like yours, even if your family wanted to spend money to send you abroad, decent prep schools might not even accept you. You should be more concerned about whether you'll have a place to study at all, or you might really end up as an idle member of society. Fu Wenbin, you? Du Wenling was so angry that her face turned red, stomping her feet as she tried to argue back, but Fu Yuanmin grabbed her arm, signaling her not to cause any more trouble. Fu Wenbin ignored her and instead walked over to me. He pulled a black fountain pen from his pocket that looked like it had been used for some years. The pen body was a bit worn but well maintained. He reached out to hand it to me, his tone a bit awkward. Here, take it. I was taken aback for a moment and didn't immediately reach for it. He averted his gaze somewhat unnaturally and explained, this is something I've used since I was little, and I always bring it to exams. It's my lucky charm. Since you're barely worthy of being considered an opponent, I'll be generous and lend it to you. He paused, his voice lowering slightly but still clear as he spoke. Study hard. I'm still waiting to compete with you at Tsinghua or Peking University. I looked at him, took the pen that still held a trace of warmth, and nodded, thank you. I will. At that moment, my grandmother was helped over by a servant. Her eyes were red and swollen, clearly from crying. She hugged me tightly, her voice choked with emotion. Sinan, my dear child, go back and take the exam well. Don't be nervous. Once you're done, Call your uncle right away and have him come pick you up immediately. Grandma will make lots and lots of delicious food for you at home, waiting for you. You must come back." I let her hold me, feeling a bit emotional inside, but still gently patted her back without making any promises. From beginning to end, Grandpa never showed his face. Perhaps he didn't know how to face this farewell, or perhaps, in his heart, this was always a journey destined from the start, one that didn't require seeing off. Uncle stood by the car, checked the time, and spoke up to remind us, "Mom, it's getting late. We should get going so we don't delay Sinan's schedule." Grandma reluctantly let go of me, wiping her tears as she repeated her instructions over and over. I took one last look at the massive white mansion that held nearly 2 years of my memories, picked up my simple luggage, and bent down to get into the car. The car drove out of the city, heading west all the way. Outside the window, the scenery gradually shifted from the bustling city to the vast plains, then to the rolling hills, and finally, that familiar, expansive, and desolate yellow earth came into view once again. Uncle didn't say much along the way, only occasionally asking about my revision progress or reminding me of a few exam precautions. His attitude was slightly warmer than it had been at the Fu family's place. He didn't take me directly back to the town where I used to live. Instead, he had the driver first take the car to the foot of the hillside where my mother was buried. He asked the driver to wait at the bottom of the hill and followed me, stumbling step by step as we climbed up the small earthen slope. My mother's grave was simple, just a mound of yellow earth with a rough stone tablet standing in front, engraved with her name, Lin Yuanxiu. Uncle stood before the grave, silently smoking for a long time. After what felt like an eternity, he finally crushed the last cigarette butt under his foot and slowly began to speak. Back when the educated youth were returning to the cities, the policies were strict, and the quotas were limited. The family exhausted all their efforts but couldn't secure an extra spot. At that time, I happened to fall seriously ill, running a high fever for several days in a row, and I was on the verge of death. Mom and Dad panicked. They had no choice but to take me back first, settle me down, and get me treated. They planned to come back for your mother as soon as possible. He took a deep breath and let it out, but by the time they had sorted out my affairs and rushed back, they couldn't find your mother anymore. The village they used to live in had been hit by a disaster, and the people had scattered. They searched here for a long time, going from village to village, almost wearing their legs out, but still couldn't find her. In the end, they had to return because of work. During those years, it felt like half the family had collapsed. Your grandmother cried all day, and your grandfather grew more and more silent. Uncle's voice grew heavy. Later, Fu Yuanmin's father, your grandfather's old comrade in arms who had shared life and death with him, passed away from illness. On his deathbed, he entrusted her to our family. She was only a few years old at the time, thin and small, with eyes somewhat resembling your mother's when she was a child. Your grandparents looked at her, perhaps grasping onto some form of solace. They poured all their love and longing for your mother into her, almost treating her as their own daughter, indulging her every whim and raising her with utmost care. Over time, perhaps even they themselves couldn't distinguish how much of that affection was for Fu Yuanmin and how much was meant to compensate for your mother through her. Over the years, our family never really stopped searching for your mother. We asked many people for help and spent a lot of money. We just never expected that when we finally received concrete news, it would be the news of her death. Uncle's voice choked up for a moment. Your grandmother fell ill right then and there, lying in bed for half a year. Your grandfather shut himself in his study for 3 days without stepping out. When he finally emerged, he told me that even if it was just a tombstone, he had to go see it. He turned his head and looked at me. Sinan. What happened back then? It was a series of unfortunate coincidences. No one wanted it to turn out that way. Don't blame them too much. I gazed at my mother's name on the tombstone, listening quietly. Whether it's strange or not, it holds no meaning for my mother who rests here forever. I turned to the side and pointed toward a smaller, older mound of earth not far away, where a simple stone tablet also stood. That's my maternal grandfather, I said to my uncle. The last thing my mother said before she left was that she wanted to be buried with Grandpa. She said this is her home. So, Uncle, my mother never blamed them, and I won't blame them either. Uncle looked at me, his mouth opening slightly, but in the end, he said nothing. I bent down, gently brushing the dust off the tombstone, silently speaking in my heart, "Mom, I'm back. I'm going to take the exam." Then, I straightened up and said to my uncle, "Let's go." I turned and walked down the mountain without looking back. The yellow earth remains silent, bearing all the joys and sorrows, but I know where my roots lie. It guides me, no matter how far I go or where I end up, I can always find my way home. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.